2024 coverage this election day. The presidential campaign has been marked by unprecedented upheaval and controversy. Now, though, it's about voting and counting. So joining me are exclusive WPBF 25 News political analysts, former Congressman Ron Klein, former Florida House Majority Leader Adam Hasner. Gentlemen, let's talk about what we're watching entering these last hours. Ron, I'll start with you. What factors are you looking at in the swing states that could be any kind of foreshadowing of what we'll see eventually, if not tonight, maybe tomorrow?
Well, both candidates have sort of made men and women their primary targets. Trump obviously has been doing the rough and tumble thing with the guys, and Kamala has obviously been talking about abortion, women's rights, things like that. It appears in the early voting numbers that are beginning to come out that women are voting in higher numbers than men. If that happens, no guarantee that anybody's voting a particular way. Yeah. That could be an impact that we should look for that trend and see what happens with that.
Adam, what are you looking at, especially in the swing states?
Yeah, so Ron talked about men, women. I'm going to talk about urban, rural, and urban, exurb, and suburb. And so to see how that benefits the Trump campaign, right? So you're talking about Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona. All of those states have very rural areas. And if you see really high turnout on election day in those rural areas, that could be really, really good news for President Trump.
Let's talk about polling. And now we can just throw the polls out because it's over. But since we have watched these polls, and obviously news organizations concentrate on them, what polls and what trends you saw in polls might be referring back to after the fact?
Well, I think what's really happened is that starting in 2016, pollsters have had difficulty of reaching voters to get them to answer the questions. And so instead of only having to call 5,000 people for a 500-person poll, they've had to make so many more calls, and then they have to add a little bit more art to the science of polling. And I think it's just made polling a little bit less reliable. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some results tonight that were much further apart from what the polls have been showing
So
us.
Clearly you are not clicking on the link that you're getting when it's texted and telling people who you're going to vote for, perhaps. Ron, what do you think? Every poll, almost every poll, predicts a photo finish. Are you buying that?
I don't think there's going to be a photo finish. I think there is going to be some polling away on one of the, and I can't estimate that every state's going to be the same. There are different things in different states. Some have, Arizona, for example, has an abortion issue on the ballot that could draw out more people in one direction versus the other. But I do think it's probably going to be not as close as this 50-50, 49-49 thing they've been portraying. And you may have in 2 or 3 or 4 states, one candidate pulling away by 2-3 points, which is a lot of votes.
And clearly that's either candidate.
Yes, either one.
Now, at the same time, let me follow up with that. Is this going to be about the issues, the economy, immigration, abortion, or does it still really come down to the 2 people running to go into the White House as president?
I think at this point, a lot of people, particularly on the Democrat independent side, are probably looking at 2 candidates, chaos on one side and someone who's at least portraying a more positive vision. I think that's probably a winning combination for her. Obviously, Republicans who like Trump, it's all about the economy, it's all about immigration. But I think on balance, the narrow margin will probably decide this thing. It's going to be about whether they like this person or this person.
Adam, this is all wrapped up together, the issues and the candidate. But what do you believe in the end makes the difference in this race?
Yeah, I think for a voter, they care about what the candidates are going to do for them, right? So are they going to make the economy better, put more money back in their pockets, reduce costs? Are they going to make communities safer, et cetera? So I do think that while the candidates are very different, and I agree with Ron that they can certainly be turned on or turned off by one or the other, I do think when people go in to vote, they're thinking about what's best for them, what's best for their family, what's best for their community.